The planet of Zira had been a battlefield for decades. Cities that once gleamed with light and life were now nothing but crumbled towers and scorched streets. Smoke rose in thin plumes from burning ruins, and the air carried the acrid smell of charred metal and scorched soil. Entire neighborhoods were empty, littered with debris and abandoned belongings. It was a place where few dared to tread, and yet, in the midst of the chaos, a small figure huddled alone. Arya, a young alien girl, sat crouched behind a shattered wall, her wide eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of her people. Her legs trembled not just from cold but from fear. Every sound, the whistle of distant winds, the crash of collapsing buildings, the faint echoes of explosions far away, made her heart pound harder. She felt utterly alone in a world that had turned against her, a world where the only company she had was the memory of her family and the distant hope that someone might come for her. Arya's species, the Lyrians, had once been proud and strong, renowned across the galaxy for their intelligence and agility. But war had torn through their settlements with a violence that spared no one. The Lyrians had been forced to evacuate, abandoning their cities to escape the relentless assault from rival factions. Their ships had carried away thousands, leaving only the rubble of homes and the silent whispers of those too weak or injured to move. Arya had tried to follow them, struggling with her small frame and the injuries she had sustained during the attack. But the chaos had separated her from the others. When she had emerged from the smoke and debris, the evacuation fleet was already gone, leaving her alone among the ruins. She had called out, her voice breaking with desperation, but only silence had answered. Her fear had grown with each passing hour as she realized that she had truly been abandoned. Arya's appearance reflected her ordeal. Her once sleek armor was scratched and scorched, her uniform torn in several places. Dirt streaked her face, mingling with streaks of dried tears. Despite her injuries, there was a quiet determination in her eyes, a spark that refused to die. She had learned to survive on her own, scavenging for food and water where she could, hiding whenever danger approached. Yet the more time passed, the more she began to doubt herself. The realization that her own people had left her behind weighed heavily on her. She wondered if she would ever see a friendly face again, or if her life would end forgotten among the ruins of her home planet. Meanwhile, Nathan Reed moved cautiously through the streets of the abandoned city. He had been part of a human reconnaissance team assigned to survey the planet after reports of scattered survivors. Nathan had heard rumors of isolated Lyrians left behind, but he had not expected to find anyone so small, so vulnerable, in the midst of the war-torn streets. His boots crunched over debris as he navigated broken roads, his rifle held at the ready. The human forces had strict orders to evacuate any remaining Lyrians if possible, but Nathan had a personal sense of duty that went beyond orders. When he spotted the small figure crouched behind the shattered wall, his heart tightened. She was terrified, fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in her posture, a resolve that told him she had endured more than most adults ever would. Nathan approached slowly, his movements deliberate so as not to startle her. "It's okay," he called out gently, keeping his voice calm and measured. "I'm here to help. You're safe now." Arya froze, staring at the human soldier with wide eyes. She had seen many humans in battle, but none had ever spoken to her kindly. Most had ignored her or treated her as if she were a burden, an obstacle in their path. This man was different. There was no anger or impatience in his voice, no suspicion or fear. Just a steady assurance that she could trust him, that she was not alone. She hesitated for a long moment, her mind racing with fear and suspicion. Nathan knelt down a few feet away, keeping himself low and non-threatening. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "I just want to get you somewhere safe." His hands were empty, palms raised in a gesture of peace. Arya studied him carefully. She could see the concern in his eyes, the care in his posture. Slowly, cautiously, she took a step forward. Then another. And another, until she was standing a few feet from him, trembling but no longer hiding. Nathan reached out a hand, not to grab her but to offer support. Arya hesitated, then placed her small hand in his. The contact was grounding, a lifeline in a world that had seemed utterly hostile until this moment. Together they moved through the ruins, Nathan leading the way and Arya following closely. He helped her over collapsed walls, guided her past unstable structures, and kept a watchful eye on the horizon for any threats. Every step was careful, deliberate, because danger was still everywhere. Scavengers, rogue factions, and wild remnants of the battlefield lurked in the shadows. But Nathan never let fear control him. His training as a soldier made him vigilant, calm, and ready. And he had something more than training, he had empathy, a quality rare in the chaos of war. Arya began to sense that she could rely on him, that for the first time, someone had chosen to stay with her when everyone else had left. As they moved, Nathan spoke gently, trying to reassure her. "You're not alone anymore. I'm going to get you to safety. We'll find a way to fix your injuries and get you out of this place." Arya nodded, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She had never been spoken to this way before. No one had ever acknowledged her fear, her pain, or her worth. Nathan's words were simple, but they carried hope, the kind of hope she hadn't felt in days, maybe even weeks. She began to walk a little taller, her steps more confident, because she knew that someone believed in her, someone was willing to protect her even when it meant risking his own life. Hours passed as they navigated the ruins. Nathan's experience and Arya's careful observation made them an efficient team. She pointed out unstable structures he should avoid, areas where scavengers might hide, and places to find water. He followed her insights carefully, realizing that despite her youth and size, she had keen intelligence and awareness. Slowly, a bond of trust formed between them, not through words alone but through shared experience and reliance. Each obstacle they overcame together strengthened Arya's faith that someone could care for her, that not all humans were like those who had turned away. Eventually, they reached the edge of the city where a small human outpost had been set up. Nathan signaled the guards and carefully guided Arya inside. The warmth, light, and safety of the base were overwhelming for her. She had spent so long in the ruins, cold, hungry, and frightened, that this simple shelter felt like paradise. Nathan helped her to a bed, made sure she had food and water, and stayed by her side while she rested. "You're safe now," he said again. And for the first time in a long time, Arya believed it. Over the next few days, Nathan continued to care for Arya, helping her heal from minor injuries and regain strength. He spoke to her gently, learning her name, listening to her story, and ensuring she knew she had value. Unlike others who had abandoned her, Nathan saw potential, courage, and intelligence. He treated her not as a burden or a problem but as a person, as someone worthy of attention and care. Slowly, Arya's fear began to fade, replaced by trust and a quiet admiration for the human who had chosen to stay when everyone else had left. The other humans at the outpost were wary at first. They had been trained to prioritize the mission, efficiency, and protocol over compassion. But they could see the bond forming between Nathan and Arya, and they began to respect it. They observed how Nathan's patience allowed Arya to speak, to learn, and to regain confidence. Some even began to assist her quietly, bringing her food, offering small comforts, and observing her intelligence. Nathan's actions had a ripple effect, changing the perception of those around him. Arya was no longer just an abandoned alien. She was someone worth protecting, someone with value beyond appearances or assumptions. One evening, as Arya looked out over the darkened plains of the ruined city, Nathan stood beside her. The stars above twinkled faintly through the haze, and the ruins stretched endlessly beneath them. "You'll see better days," Nathan said softly. "I'll make sure of it." Arya leaned slightly toward him, feeling a warmth she had not felt in weeks. She had survived because one human had refused to turn away, because someone had stayed when everyone else left. And for the first time she believed that the world could be kind again. Nathan Reed had not expected to find anyone in the ruins, let alone a young alien girl who seemed lost and hopeless. But in saving Arya, he realized that his choices mattered, not only for survival but for the value of life itself. She had shown resilience, courage, and intelligence even before he met her, and now she had the chance to grow, learn, and thrive because someone had seen her worth. In a universe where most had abandoned her, Nathan had chosen differently, and in doing so he had given her hope, safety, and the first step toward a future where she might not only survive but flourish. The first part of their story ended not with triumph or battle, but with the quiet acknowledgement of trust, compassion, and hope. Arya had been abandoned, left to die among ruins that whispered despair, but Nathan's choice to stay had changed everything. He had taken a risk, defied orders, and put himself in potential danger, but he had done it out of simple humanity. And as Arya looked at him, her eyes reflecting both fear and gratitude, the bond between human and alien had begun to form, an unspoken promise that no matter what the universe threw at them next, neither would face it alone. Nathan Reed guided Arya through the rough terrain outside the ruined city, past jagged rocks and scorched earth, until they finally reached the human base. The base was modest, built quickly to house survivors and maintain a watch on the planet. Lights flickered from small buildings and smoke rose from cooking stations. Guards patrolled in cautious patterns, rifles at the ready, eyes scanning for danger. When Nathan approached, they instinctively tensed, prepared for combat. but Nathan raised a hand in a signal of peace, his voice calm and firm. "This one is with me," he said. The guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons, sensing the trust Nathan commanded and the seriousness of his words. Arya looked around, wide-eyed, as the base stretched before her. The humans were efficient, disciplined, and cautious, but there was an underlying warmth in the way they worked together. People passed trays of food, tended to injured soldiers, and checked monitors with careful precision. The hum of activity was different from the silence and fear of the ruins. Arya felt a flicker of hope, though she did not fully trust it yet. Every step she took, Nathan stayed close, guiding her gently. "You can rest here," he said softly. "I'll make sure you're safe. No one will harm you." His words were simple, but they carried a weight she hadn't felt in days, weeks perhaps. They meant someone had chosen to stay, someone had seen her worth. Nathan brought her to a small, secure room where she could rest. The walls were plain but clean, the bed sturdy, with soft blankets folded neatly on top. Nathan made sure she had water and simple food, knowing her species might need nourishment different from humans. He watched her carefully as she ate, silently checking that she could handle the portions and that she was not in pain. "It's not much," he said, "but it's all we have. You'll get stronger here." Arya listened, nodding slightly. She had been offered food before, but often it had been given reluctantly or with suspicion. This time it was different. Nathan did not expect anything from her in return. He simply wanted to ensure she survived. The first night was quiet. Arya lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the base outside. She could hear the occasional footsteps of soldiers moving in the corridors, their conversations low and methodical. For a long time she could not sleep, her mind replaying images of ruins, smoke, and abandoned friends. Nathan had left her alone but kept watch nearby. He returned periodically to check on her, ensuring she was warm and had enough water. At one point he spoke softly through the door. "You're safe. That's all that matters right now." His voice was steady and calm, reassuring. For the first time in days, Arya felt that someone genuinely cared about her well-being. Over the next few days, Nathan continued to provide basic care and guidance. He helped her wash, changed her bandages, and made sure she had enough food. Every action was performed with patience, without hurry, without judgment. The other soldiers watched from a distance, some curious, others skeptical. It was rare for a human to invest so much effort in someone they had been told was useless or abandoned. Nathan did not mind their skepticism. He treated Arya as an individual with value, someone whose life mattered. Slowly she began to respond, trusting him enough to speak, to ask questions, and to explore her surroundings. Arya's curiosity grew as she observed the humans at work. She watched them repair vehicles, calibrate weapons, and manage supplies. She saw their efficiency, their discipline, and the quiet care they showed toward one another. Nathan explained things patiently when she asked, describing their tools, strategies, and the way they kept everyone safe. Arya began to understand that humans, despite their flaws, could be compassionate and thoughtful. Nathan never forced her to interact, never rushed her learning, and never treated her as a burden. She realized that trust could grow when people were patient and consistent, even in times of war. Nathan noticed small improvements in Arya each day. Her fear began to fade, replaced by a quiet curiosity and cautious confidence. She started helping him in small ways, carrying light supplies, observing repair work, and learning how the base operated. He encouraged her gently, praising her observations and insights without making her feel pressured. "Good job noticing that," he said one day as she pointed out a loose panel on a communications tower. "You're quick to see what others might miss." Arya felt a surge of pride she had not known before. For the first time, she understood that her intelligence and skills mattered. Interactions with other soldiers remained limited at first. Many had difficulty adjusting to the idea that a young alien, abandoned and injured, could be valuable. They whispered, questioned, and occasionally watched with suspicion. Nathan ignored them, focusing instead on Arya's well-being and her gradual recovery. He introduced her slowly, making sure she felt safe and in control. "You decide when you're ready," he told her. "No one is going to rush you." That simple respect for her autonomy was new to Arya. It reinforced the notion that humans could act with kindness and integrity, even when circumstances were harsh. Food became a routine act of care and trust. Nathan would sit with her while she ate, sharing simple meals and explaining what each item was. Arya learned the taste of human food, discovering subtle flavors she had never experienced. Nathan made no assumptions, simply allowing her to try, to learn, and to enjoy the small comforts of life again. Meal times became moments of connection, not just nourishment. Arya began to share stories of her home, her species, and the events leading up to the evacuation. Nathan listened carefully, never interrupting, never dismissing her experiences. He allowed her voice to be heard, validating her feelings and memories, something she had not experienced in a long time. The base's environment, structured and safe, allowed Arya to recover physically and emotionally. She learned routines, when to rest, how to assist in minor tasks, and how to navigate the base without fear. Nathan continued to guide her gently, never pushing her beyond her comfort. The slow, consistent care and respect nurtured a growing bond between them. Trust, once fragile and uncertain, began to solidify. Arya realized she could rely on Nathan, and in return he recognized her growing resilience and intelligence. Their partnership became a small island of stability amidst the chaos of the war-torn planet. One afternoon, as Nathan and Arya walked along a secured corridor, he handed her a small tablet displaying maps of the surrounding area. "I want you to look at this," he said. "See if you notice anything unusual." Arya studied it carefully, her sharp eyes scanning for anomalies, potential hazards, and safe paths. Nathan watched her quietly, impressed with her focus and attention to detail. This simple act of inclusion, of valuing her perspective, reinforced her growing confidence. She realized that humans did not merely provide care, they could recognize and value insight, intelligence, and observation. The other soldiers began to notice the changes in Arya as well. She moved with more confidence, spoke more openly, and contributed ideas when asked. Nathan subtly encouraged them to see her as capable, not just vulnerable. Slowly, perceptions shifted. The alien girl who had been abandoned and ignored was now considered a valuable presence. She inspired a quiet admiration among some soldiers who had doubted her abilities. Nathan's consistent support had not only helped Arya but had set an example for others. That kindness, patience, and respect could reveal potential hidden beneath appearances and assumptions. Arya began to form small routines with Nathan. They would patrol sections of the base together, check on supplies, and occasionally run simulations for security drills. Nathan treated her like a team member, explaining her role clearly, praising her contributions, and allowing her to make decisions. She felt a sense of purpose she had not known in days, weeks, or even months. Every instruction, every gentle correction, every shared observation strengthened her confidence. Nathan's belief in her, unwavering and steady, became a foundation upon which she could rebuild trust and self-assurance. Sleep became easier in the human base. Arya no longer woke in the middle of the night in terror, expecting to find herself alone and abandoned. Nathan's presence, the routine care, and the predictable safety allowed her mind to rest. She began dreaming again, small dreams of recovery, of exploration, and perhaps even a future beyond the ruins. Nathan never forced conversation, never demanded answers, and never judged her silence. He understood that trust grew at its own pace and he allowed it to flourish naturally. Arya's reliance on him was not born of fear but of respect and understanding, a testament to the subtle power of consistent care. Weeks passed and Arya's recovery continued. Her wounds healed, her stamina returned, and her confidence grew. Nathan's consistent care had done more than preserve life. It had nurtured hope, strength, and the beginnings of self-assurance. She began to explore the base independently, still cautious but willing to take small risks. Nathan observed silently, offering guidance when necessary but allowing her the freedom to make choices. This balance of protection and autonomy reinforced the lessons she had begun to learn, that trust could coexist with independence, and that kindness did not diminish her strength. One evening, Nathan found Arya studying a map of the surrounding area. She was marking points of interest, potential hazards, and safe routes. "I see you've been busy," Nathan said with a quiet smile. Arya looked up, her eyes bright. "I want to help," she said simply. Nathan nodded, understanding that she had begun to take initiative. "You're learning fast," he replied. "That's exactly what we need." His praise was genuine, acknowledging not only her skills but also her willingness to engage and contribute. For Arya, this simple recognition was powerful, a reinforcement of the idea that humans could see worth where others did not. Arya began to speak more, asking questions about human culture, technology, and the war. Nathan answered patiently, never dismissing her curiosity. He encouraged her to think critically, to observe patterns, and to contribute her insights. The bond between them deepened, rooted in trust, respect, and shared purpose. Arya's confidence grew alongside her physical recovery, creating a foundation for future challenges. She realized that survival was not just about strength, it was also about connection, guidance, and the willingness of others to see value where it had previously been overlooked. Nathan's acts of care were small but consistent. Meals shared, gentle guidance, opportunities to contribute, protection from danger, and respect for her autonomy. Each act, repeated day after day, demonstrated to Arya that trust and compassion were not weaknesses, but tools that could help someone recover, thrive, and discover their own potential. Slowly, the walls around her heart and mind began to fall. She no longer feared human intentions entirely. She began to feel capable, valuable, and, most importantly, seen. By the end of the first month at the base, Arya was no longer the frightened, abandoned girl crouched in the ruins. She walked with confidence, spoke with clarity, and engaged in tasks alongside Nathan and the other soldiers. While they still treated her with care, the tone had shifted from pity to respect. Nathan's choice to stay with her, to offer simple acts of care without expectation, had transformed her life. She had learned that humans, despite the chaos of war, could be compassionate, patient, and discerning. Trust, once fragile, had taken root, and Arya was ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing she had an ally who would never turn away. The calm of the human base was shattered one morning by the blaring alarms that echoed through the corridors. Nathan Reed was already awake, scanning the perimeter monitors when the first signs appeared, small dots moving quickly across the terrain outside the base. They were fast, calculated, and not human. Nathan's heart tightened. "Rogue alien strike team," he muttered under his breath, recognizing the patterns from previous engagements. The base erupted into organized chaos. Soldiers scrambled to stations, weapons were checked and loaded, defensive turrets powered up, and alarms screamed warnings. The humans were trained for battle, but even they felt the sudden tension and fear that surged through the compound. Arya, who had been observing from her room, froze at the sound of the alarms. Her body tensed, instincts kicking in. Nathan rushed to her side, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Stay with me," he said firmly. "We're going to handle this. You can help, but stay calm." Arya's mind raced, memories of previous conflicts flooding back, but she knew Nathan was right. Panic would get them nowhere. She took a deep breath, focusing on the monitors and sensors nearby. The humans had not expected her to contribute in battle. They only knew her as the small, abandoned girl they had rescued, but Arya had always been intelligent and quick to analyze her environment. This was her moment to prove it. She approached one of the tactical displays, her fingers moving quickly over the holographic interface. She began assessing the incoming threat, noting the trajectory, speed, and formation of the alien strike team. Her observations were precise. "They're not attacking randomly," she said. "They're targeting our supply depots and communications tower first. If we lose those, our defenses will crumble quickly." Nathan glanced at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. She had never spoken like this before, never given such detailed analysis, but the confidence in her tone was undeniable. He nodded sharply. "Good observation. Let's adjust our defenses to protect those areas first." Arya continued to analyze the movement of the attackers. Her species, the Lyrians, had always excelled in spatial awareness and tactical thinking, and her mind worked rapidly under pressure. She identified weak points in the strike team's formation and potential traps they might spring. "If we draw them toward the west perimeter, we can funnel them into the turret's line of fire," she suggested. Nathan's eyes widened. No one had expected her to take command of tactical decisions, yet her reasoning was sound. Without hesitation, he relayed her instructions to the soldiers, who initially hesitated but trusted Nathan's judgment. The humans repositioned, setting up defensive lines exactly as Arya had calculated. The first wave of attackers reached the perimeter with frightening speed. Nathan stood at the command station, watching closely as the humans and Arya executed the plan. Turrets opened fire in perfect synchronization, catching the rogue team in a crossfire. Arya's predictions proved accurate. Enemy units were caught in choke points, their movements anticipated and countered. Soldiers who had doubted her capabilities before began to notice the precision and foresight she displayed. Even seasoned veterans were impressed by the young alien's intelligence. Nathan felt a surge of pride. This was the girl everyone had ignored, the one abandoned and underestimated, demonstrating abilities far beyond expectations. Arya's contributions did not stop at strategy. She manipulated the base's defensive systems, rerouting energy to shields and power grids where needed. She calibrated turrets, activated automated defense drones, and even interfaced with communication systems to send misleading signals to the attackers. Her hands moved quickly over panels, her mind calculating probabilities and outcomes in real time. Nathan observed, amazed at her skill and calm under pressure. He realized that rescuing her was not just an act of kindness, it had given the humans an invaluable ally. The girl who had seemed fragile and helpless had become an indispensable part of the defense. As the battle continued, Nathan noticed soldiers looking at Arya differently. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to respect, from doubt to recognition. Her intelligence and quick thinking had turned the tide in the base's favor. Even the more hardened commanders could not ignore her contributions. Nathan made sure to give her credit when addressing the team. Arya noticed their patterns and helped us adjust our defenses, he told them. Without her we would be overwhelmed. She has saved lives today. The acknowledgement was not just for morale, it reinforced the truth. The girl they had dismissed was a force to be reckoned with. The rogue strike team attempted a flanking maneuver, trying to bypass the defenses Nathan and Arya had set. Arya quickly noticed the shift in their formation. "They're trying to approach from the north ridge," she shouted, her voice calm but urgent. Nathan immediately acted on her information, coordinating the troops to intercept the flank. Soldiers moved quickly, taking positions Arya had suggested, and prepared to engage. When the enemies reached the ridge, they found themselves trapped, exposed to heavy fire and unable to retreat. Arya's calculations had anticipated the move perfectly. The strike team's advance faltered, and chaos spread among their ranks. In the heat of battle, Arya maintained clarity. Nathan could not help but marvel at her focus. Most humans would be overwhelmed by the situation, panicked by the speed and scale of the attack. Yet Arya remained calm, her mind working through multiple layers of strategy simultaneously. She noticed patterns that even experienced soldiers missed, predicting enemy maneuvers, identifying vulnerable points, and coordinating defensive measures. Her insights allowed the humans to respond faster and more effectively than they could have on their own. It was a moment that would redefine their perception of the small alien girl they had once overlooked. As the attackers began to retreat, it became clear that the base had survived the assault largely due to Arya's contributions. Nathan checked the status reports and realized that casualties were minimal compared to previous encounters with similar forces. Soldiers and automated defenses had worked efficiently, guided by her strategic input. Nathan approached her, a mix of relief and admiration in his expression. "You did amazing," he said quietly. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Arya looked at him, breathing heavily but calm, and nodded. She had saved lives, proven her intelligence, and demonstrated a strength that few had recognized. The aftermath of the battle brought a mix of exhaustion and relief. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter, repaired damages, and ensured no enemy units remained in hiding. Throughout the base, murmurs spread among the personnel about the young alien who had turned the fight in their favor. Nathan watched her quietly, seeing the subtle change in how others looked at her. She was no longer just the abandoned girl rescued from the ruins. She was a strategist, a problem solver, and a vital member of their team. Even the skeptics could not deny her worth. Arya herself felt a shift inside. The fear that had dominated her thoughts since the evacuation was beginning to lift. She realized that she had value, that her intelligence and skills mattered, and that one human soldier had believed in her enough to allow her to prove herself. Nathan's support had given her the confidence to act decisively, to trust her own judgment, and to embrace the capabilities she had always possessed. She understood now that true strength could come in many forms, not just physical power or size, but in observation, intelligence, and the ability to act when it mattered most. Nathan debriefed the soldiers, ensuring they documented Arya's contributions accurately. He spoke with respect and emphasis, making sure everyone understood the role she had played. "She noticed patterns we missed and helped coordinate the defense," he explained. "Recognize her intelligence and skills. She is one of us now." His words carried authority and sincerity. The soldiers listened, some nodding in agreement, others quietly reflecting on their initial assumptions about her. It was a turning point in perception, a recognition that the value of an individual could not be judged by appearance or past circumstances. Arya, exhausted but composed, sat in the command center as the base settled into routine. Nathan checked on her, offering water and a place to rest. "Take a break," he said. "You've earned it." She nodded, accepting the care, but her mind was already analyzing the battle, reviewing what worked and what could have been improved. Her analytical nature could not rest, even in moments of peace. Nathan watched silently, realizing that this combination of intellect and calm under pressure made her extraordinary. She was more than a survivor, she was a thinker, a guide, and now a trusted ally. The respect between Nathan and Arya deepened that day. Their partnership had grown from simple care to mutual reliance and acknowledgement of each other's strengths. Nathan had provided support, safety, and trust. Arya had responded with intelligence, quick thinking, and decisive action. Together, they had turned a near disaster into a triumph. The other humans at the base began to see the value of treating others, especially those who seemed weak or abandoned, with patience, respect, and encouragement. The lesson was clear: strength could appear in unexpected forms, and those willing to recognize it could achieve extraordinary results. As the sun set over the ruins surrounding the base, casting long shadows across the perimeter, Nathan stood beside Arya. The battle was over, but the bond formed through the fight remained. "You've changed things here," he said quietly. "Not just for us but for everyone who thought you were helpless." Arya's eyes reflected relief, pride, and a growing confidence. She understood now that she had a place, a purpose, and allies who believed in her. The girl who had been abandoned and ignored had revealed her hidden potential, proving that those who are underestimated can rise to meet challenges in ways no one expects. The morning after the battle, the atmosphere in the human base was different. Soldiers moved with a sense of purpose, checking supplies, repairing damaged equipment, and monitoring the perimeter. Yet beneath the routine, whispers traveled quickly from group to group. The topic was always the same: the small alien girl who had turned the tide of the attack. Arya, who had once been ignored and underestimated, was now the center of attention, not because of fear or superstition but because of respect. She moved quietly through the corridors, her eyes alert, observing the humans around her. Nathan Reed walked beside her, a steady presence, making sure she felt safe in the attention she now drew. Arya's actions during the battle had not gone unnoticed. The officers gathered reports and reviewed surveillance footage, confirming her insights and decisions had saved lives and protected critical infrastructure. Nathan had insisted that every contribution be documented accurately, and this recognition had a ripple effect across the base. For the first time, Arya understood that her intelligence and quick thinking had value beyond immediate survival. It was more than strategy, it was acknowledgement that she belonged, that she was capable of more than anyone had imagined. Nathan's belief in her had paved the way for this change. The other soldiers approached her with cautious curiosity at first. They asked questions not out of mockery or suspicion, but to understand her thought process. "How did you predict their movements?" one of the soldiers asked, a middle-aged man named Peter who had fought in multiple campaigns. Arya explained calmly, detailing her observations of the attacker's formation, the weaknesses she identified, and the patterns that led her to suggest certain defensive maneuvers. Peter listened carefully, nodding slowly. He had expected a frightened, inexperienced girl, not a strategic mind capable of seeing the battlefield with clarity. "You really saved us," he admitted, his tone respectful. Nathan watched these interactions quietly, knowing that respect was earned gradually. He had treated Arya as an individual from the moment he rescued her, giving her time, patience, and space to adapt. Now, the results of that consistent care were visible. Soldiers who had doubted her abilities were beginning to seek her input. Commanders were incorporating her suggestions into patrol routes, supply planning, and defensive strategies. Even those who had once whispered that she was a burden began to see her as a valuable team member. Nathan's actions had shown them that judgment based on appearances or past circumstances could be misleading. Arya herself felt the change. The fear and doubt that had lingered since her abandonment were slowly fading, replaced by confidence and a sense of purpose. She began to speak more freely, contributing ideas, asking questions, and offering insights that extended beyond the tactical. Nathan encouraged this participation, listening attentively and affirming her thoughts. "Good observation," he said one day as she suggested an improvement in the base's surveillance system. "That will make a big difference in our monitoring." His praise was sincere, reinforcing the growing trust between them and validating her abilities in front of the others. The recognition extended beyond the base itself. Allies in nearby sectors had been monitoring the situation through communications relays, and word of Arya's actions spread quickly. Messages of congratulations arrived, acknowledging her bravery and intelligence. Some of the more conservative human units were skeptical at first, questioning whether an alien could make meaningful contributions. But the detailed reports and video evidence left little room for doubt. Arya's performance had not only saved the base but had demonstrated qualities that humans respected deeply: foresight, calmness under pressure, and strategic thinking. Nathan made a point to introduce Arya formally to the leadership council within the base. "This is Arya," he said, gesturing to her with quiet pride. "She played a key role in defending our base. Her observations and decisions saved lives. She deserves recognition and a voice in our planning. Arya felt a mixture of nerves and determination. She had never been placed in such a position before. Speaking before authority figures who were often cautious or dismissive was intimidating. Yet she also knew that Nathan's support and the trust of the team gave her strength. She would not fail them now. When the council listened to her explanation of the battle, her suggestions for improvements, and her analysis of enemy behavior, there was a collective acknowledgement of her capabilities. One officer, Lieutenant Clara, leaned forward, nodding. "Your insights are impressive," she said. "It's clear that your experience and observations have value. You will be included in our planning sessions moving forward." Arya absorbed the words carefully, understanding that this was more than praise, it was trust. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a contributor, a member of the team whose input mattered. Nathan remained by her side throughout these meetings, providing support and subtly guiding interactions. His presence reminded others that her role was legitimate, not a matter of favoritism or novelty. Soldiers who had once doubted her watched her navigate discussions with intelligence and composure. They observed her ability to think critically, respond to questions, and offer practical solutions. Gradually, respect became a consensus. Arya's voice was no longer tentative or hesitant, it carried authority and purpose. Nathan's belief in her had allowed her to discover this inner strength, and now the base recognized it as well. Daily routines at the base continued, but Arya's responsibilities grew. She was asked to monitor incoming communications, analyze patrol data, and participate in planning defensive measures. Nathan ensured she was not overwhelmed, balancing her workload with opportunities to rest and recover. He taught her techniques for staying calm under stress, for prioritizing tasks, and for communicating clearly with others. Each lesson strengthened her abilities and deepened the trust between them. Arya felt capable, respected, and increasingly confident in her role. The young alien who had been abandoned in the ruins was now a key contributor to the base's safety and effectiveness. Interactions with soldiers became increasingly collaborative. Arya shared her observations about enemy behavior, environmental hazards, and supply management. Nathan encouraged dialogue, prompting soldiers to listen and learn from her. Slowly, the culture of the base began to shift. Where once caution and skepticism dominated, now there was curiosity and appreciation. Soldiers recognized that intelligence and strategic thinking could come from unexpected sources. Arya's example demonstrated that value was not defined by species, size, or prior status, but by capability, insight, and the willingness to act effectively. One day, a situation arose when a minor security breach occurred in a supply depot. Soldiers were preparing to respond, but Arya stepped forward, calmly analyzing the situation. She identified the source of the problem, proposed a containment strategy, and coordinated the response with Nathan's guidance. The breach was resolved efficiently, with no casualties and minimal damage. Observers were impressed not only by her insight but by her ability to communicate clearly and calmly under pressure. Nathan smiled quietly as he watched her work. The girl who had once been abandoned in the ruins was now trusted to make important decisions. News of Arya's contributions reached other units stationed on nearby planets and outposts. Transmissions and reports highlighted her role in the defense and her strategic thinking. Allies expressed interest in including her perspectives in broader operations, and some even requested her participation in joint planning sessions. Arya's influence extended beyond the base itself. Her reputation as a capable, intelligent, and brave individual grew rapidly. Nathan remained quietly proud, knowing that her journey from abandoned child to respected team member had been built on trust, care, and opportunity. Arya also began mentoring other young members of the team. She shared her insights, explained strategic concepts, and helped them develop observational skills. Nathan encouraged this mentorship, recognizing that it would strengthen the base and empower others to value each member's contributions. Arya's role evolved beyond that of survivor and participant. She became a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of resilience. Soldiers learned from her not just tactics, but also the lesson that respect and trust could reveal hidden potential in anyone regardless of their origin. By the end of the first few weeks after the battle, the culture of the base had changed. Respect for Arya was evident in interactions, decisions, and routines. Nathan continued to support her, ensuring she had the opportunity to learn and contribute. Arya herself had grown more confident, aware of her abilities and proud of her role. She understood that the recognition she now received was not given lightly, it had been earned through courage, intelligence, and consistent demonstration of her capabilities. Nathan's consistent support had created the environment in which she could shine. As the base settled into a rhythm, Nathan and Arya stood together overlooking the perimeter. Soldiers patrolled below, equipment hummed in efficient patterns, and the horizon showed signs of rebuilding and stabilization. "You've come a long way," Nathan said softly. Arya nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She had transformed from a frightened, abandoned girl into a respected, contributing member of the team. Nathan's faith in her had allowed her to grow, and the recognition she now received from others reinforced the value of that trust. The base had learned to see her worth, and in doing so, had embraced a lesson in humanity, empathy, and the potential of the underestimated. Arya realized that respect was not simply given. It was earned through actions, intelligence, and the courage to face challenges. Nathan had given her opportunity and belief, but she had taken the chance to demonstrate her abilities. The human base now recognized her as a leader in her own right, a trusted voice and a capable strategist. Soldiers sought her counsel, commanders included her in decisions, and her reputation spread among allies. She had achieved what she once thought impossible, to be valued and respected for who she truly was. The young alien girl who had been abandoned in the ruins now stood firmly within the community of the human base. Nathan had remained her steady support, quietly guiding, protecting, and believing in her. Others had come to see what he already knew. Arya's intelligence, insight, and courage made her an indispensable part of their team. Respect had been earned, trust had been built, and Arya had proven that strength came in many forms, not just physical but intellectual, emotional, and moral. The war had left scars across planets, broken alliances, and shattered communities. Yet amid the chaos, new opportunities arose for those willing to act with vision, compassion, and intelligence. Mara, once a young alien girl handed over as a mere payment in a risky trade, had proven herself to be far more than anyone had imagined. She was no longer simply the alien in Ethan's care. She had become a trusted advisor, strategist, and bridge between species. Her abilities and wisdom had earned the respect of humans and aliens alike, and now she faced a choice: return to her people, claim a royal position, or remain with Ethan and the humans who had given her a chance when others had dismissed her. Ethan Clarke observed her quietly from the ship's command center. Mara stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, her fingers tracing points of strategic interest, supply routes, and areas where human and alien cooperation could be strengthened. She moved with quiet confidence, her posture calm yet commanding. Ethan marveled at how far she had come from the frightened, cautious girl who had first stepped aboard his ship. In the early days he had treated her with basic care and respect, simply giving her space to adapt, to heal, and to discover her own abilities. Now her presence radiated authority, intelligence, and insight. She had grown into a leader without losing the humility that had made her approachable and human in her interactions. The galaxy itself was in flux. Many alien factions still mistrusted humans, and centuries-old prejudices had hardened walls between civilizations. But Mara had a perspective that transcended old grudges. Her experience had taught her the importance of trust, patience, and understanding. With Ethan's support, she began to develop initiatives that encouraged collaboration between species. Simple gestures, shared knowledge, joint defense training, humanitarian missions, started to change attitudes. Mara knew that progress was slow, that change required consistent effort, but she also knew it was possible. Her influence spread quietly yet effectively, one action at a time. Ethan watched as Mara briefed the human officers and allied alien leaders. She explained complex scenarios, offered strategic recommendations, and proposed cooperative ventures. Her ideas were not based solely on tactical advantage. They also considered ethics, fairness, and the potential for long-term peace. Human officers listened with attention and respect, noting that her insights often revealed perspectives they had overlooked. Alien leaders, initially cautious, began to see that Mara was not bound by the prejudices of her own species or of humans. Her presence alone became a symbol that strength, intelligence, and leadership could come from unexpected places, and that value was often hidden beneath appearances. In one council session, Mara outlined a plan for shared patrols between human and alien fleets, designed to protect vulnerable planets from rogue factions and pirates. She identified sectors where intelligence sharing could prevent conflicts and reduce unnecessary confrontations. If we coordinate our patrols and share data openly, she explained, we can reduce casualties and strengthen trust. Cooperation is stronger than isolation. Her calm and logical delivery impressed everyone in the room. Ethan noticed that soldiers who had once doubted her now looked at her with admiration. Her words carried weight because they were informed, thoughtful, and solutions-oriented. She was not demanding obedience, she was offering guidance. Ethan himself had changed in the process. He had started simply by seeing value in someone others ignored. Over time he had learned that leadership involved more than command. It involved understanding, trust, and the ability to foster potential in others. Mara's presence had taught him patience, humility, and the quiet power of encouragement. He had observed how she approached problems, how she treated allies and subordinates, and how she assessed situations with clarity. In guiding her growth, he had also grown as a leader. Together they became a team in the truest sense, each complementing the other's strengths, learning from each other and building something larger than themselves. As weeks turned into months, Mara's influence expanded beyond the ship and the immediate base. Other sectors of human and alien-controlled space requested her guidance. She helped coordinate relief efforts on planets devastated by war, advised on trade agreements that could prevent conflict, and mentored both human and alien strategists. Her approach was deliberate, emphasizing communication and trust. She recognized that true strength was not simply in firepower or domination but in the ability to unite disparate groups under a common purpose. Mara had become a symbol of that principle, showing that value was often hidden, waiting for someone willing to recognize it. Ethan occasionally reflected on the path that had led them here. Had he known that the simple act of accepting Mara as payment would evolve into such profound consequences, he might have paused, but perhaps he would not have acted at all if he had hesitated. He had made a choice grounded in basic respect, seeing someone as a person rather than an object. That choice had set in motion events that neither he nor Mara could have foreseen. From a transactional moment had emerged collaboration, mutual respect, and a growing network of alliances that spanned the stars. He realized that small acts of belief in others' worth could ripple outward, creating outcomes far greater than anyone expected. Mara also considered her position carefully. She could claim leadership within her own species, assume power, or return to her royal status. Yet she chose to remain with Ethan and the humans not out of obligation, but because she believed in their potential to act differently, to see worth where others ignored it, and to build something stronger together. Her decision was strategic, practical, and moral. She understood that she could have influence anywhere, but she also valued the opportunity to work alongside humans who had demonstrated empathy, courage, and respect. Choosing to stay was both a vote of confidence and a continuation of the trust that had been placed in her from the moment Ethan had accepted her aboard his ship. The decision also sent a message across worlds. Other alien civilizations, long suspicious of human intentions, began to reconsider. Here was a human leader who had recognized the value in someone previously dismissed, and here was an alien leader who had chosen collaboration over dominance. Mara's presence reinforced the idea that alliances could be built on mutual respect rather than fear or coercion. The symbolic nature of her choice encouraged other leaders to seek dialogue, cooperation, and understanding, rather than continuing cycles of mistrust and conflict. Ethan and Mara worked closely to develop protocols for shared governance, conflict resolution, and interspecies cooperation. Mara's insight into alien cultures complemented Ethan's understanding of human priorities. Together, they designed initiatives that balanced security, resource distribution, and diplomacy. They traveled to nearby planets, observing conditions firsthand, consulting with local leaders, and offering guidance. Each successful mission reinforced the idea that humans and aliens could work together effectively when they recognized the value of every individual, regardless of species or origin. The transformation extended to the crew of Ethan's ship as well. Soldiers and officers observed Mara's leadership, her strategic acumen, and her calm decisiveness. They learned from her example, understanding that intelligence and insight were as crucial as strength in survival and success. Ethan did not take credit for her abilities. He quietly facilitated her growth, gave her space to exercise judgment, and ensured her contributions were visible and recognized. Mara thrived in this environment, confident in her role, aware of her influence, and capable of guiding others. During a critical negotiation with a coalition of alien merchants, Mara's guidance proved decisive. Previous attempts by humans to establish trade agreements had failed due to mistrust and miscommunication. Mara interpreted subtle cues, cultural expectations, and language nuances that humans might have missed. With Ethan's support, she mediated discussions, clarifying intentions, offering compromises, and ensuring mutual benefit. The agreements were signed smoothly, creating new channels for trade, resource exchange, and cooperation. Ethan watched silently, proud that his team, and humanity itself, was demonstrating the ability to see value in ways others often ignored. As the months continued, Mara's influence shaped not only strategy and diplomacy but also education and training. She began mentoring young humans and aliens, teaching observational skills, critical thinking, and strategic reasoning. Under her guidance, these students learned the importance of empathy, analysis, and foresight. They observed firsthand how respect and recognition could unlock potential. Mara's philosophy became a guiding principle. Strength is often hidden, and the measure of leadership is the ability to recognize it in others. One quiet evening aboard the ship, Mara and Ethan stood on the observation deck, gazing at distant stars. The galaxy stretched infinitely before them, a canvas of potential, danger, and opportunity. Ethan spoke softly, "You've changed everything, Mara. Not just for humans but for all the worlds we touch." Mara smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both pride and humility. "We've changed things together," she replied. "And there's still so much work to do. But this is a start. A strong start." Ethan nodded silently, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. Not in victory or power, but in the quiet knowledge that humanity had begun to see worth where others often ignored it. The alliance they were building extended outward, touching multiple planets, bases, and communities. Mara's guidance ensured that misunderstandings were minimized, conflicts mitigated, and opportunities for cooperation maximized. She demonstrated that leadership could be inclusive, intelligent, and principled. Humans began to understand that value was not always obvious, that strength could be subtle, and that judgment based solely on appearances often missed the most important qualities. Her presence reshaped perceptions, creating a culture where potential was recognized, nurtured, and celebrated. Ethan continued his role as a facilitator, ensuring that Mara's contributions were amplified rather than diminished. He never sought the spotlight, never claimed credit, but quietly supported her efforts, reinforcing the principle that leadership involved recognizing and fostering talent, wherever it might be found. Mara, in turn, remained committed, focused, and thoughtful, ensuring that every decision considered both strategic advantage and ethical responsibility. Together, they exemplified a new model of collaboration, one built on trust, mutual respect, and the recognition of hidden potential. As the galaxy slowly healed from the scars of war, Mara's work laid the foundation for lasting peace and collaboration. Human and alien communities that had once been suspicious or hostile began to engage in joint projects, sharing knowledge, technology, and resources. Disputes were resolved through dialogue rather than force, and Mara's philosophy guided these efforts. She had proven that even those underestimated or dismissed could shape the course of history when given the chance, the trust, and the freedom to act. Ethan watched her quietly one evening as she reviewed a report on a newly stabilized sector. He smiled softly, knowing that humanity's true strength lay not only in technology or firepower but in the ability to see worth where others might ignore it. Mara had exemplified this truth in every action, every decision, and every moment of quiet leadership. She had transformed from a so-called slave into a visionary, a guide, and a leader who reshaped relationships across worlds. And in her success, Ethan saw the reflection of humanity at its best: empathetic, discerning, and capable of recognizing the hidden strength in others. The ship continued its journey through the galaxy, carrying Mara, Ethan, and a growing network of humans and allies dedicated to collaboration, understanding, and shared progress. Mara's influence ensured that no one would be overlooked, that potential would not be ignored, and that true strength would be recognized in all its forms. Ethan remained quietly beside her, proud, grateful, and assured that the choice to see value where others had ignored it had created a legacy that would endure across the stars.